Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Farmer Greg here, and welcome to the 609th episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where every day we work together to educate and inspire you to become part of your food revolution. Water is one of the things we need multiple times a day. And as it gets hotter and drier, we need to become a lot more aware of where our water comes from and where it goes. Plus, when we're growing food, we're going to need to think about where we're getting our water from. People are surprised when they learn that I collect rainwater for my garden, even though I live in the desert of Phoenix, Arizona. What most people don't know is that you can harvest a lot of water. For example, it only takes 1 inch of rain on a 1,000 square foot collection area, such as the roof of your house, to collect 600 gallons of water. That's why you don't need to live in a wet place for water harvesting to be a viable self-sufficiency tool for your house and garden. If I can do it in Phoenix, then you can do it no matter where you are, especially if you live in a wetter place than where I do. Learning to harvest your own fresh water means you don't have to rely heavily on your area's municipal water supply. You can be in control of the inputs into your garden and stop watering your plants with chemically treated water. If you're ready to uplevel your garden game and explore all the possibilities of harvesting water, you'll want to attend the Urban Farm U's upcoming online water harvesting summit this June 15th through the 17th. This 3-day event features visionary speakers sharing their expert knowledge on topics like rainwater harvesting, graywater harvesting, subsurface irrigation, building healthy soil to hold more water, and more. The 2021 Water Harvesting Summit is free to attend, and you're going to learn the best techniques for watering your garden and saving water. And I have a little surprise in store for you when you sign up. To reserve your spot in the summit, head over to waterharvestingsummit.com and get ready to create the self-sufficient life of your dreams. Today is Farmer Friday, a quick and dirty tidbit at growing your garden. Each episode will feature less than 10 minutes of essential content for growing your garden, and some episodes we will answer your questions. If you have one, send it to questions@urbanfarm.org. Today we're talking with Marlene Simon with the Flower Power Garden Hour podcast about cover crops for your garden. Enjoy. Welcome, Marlene.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. Always excited to chat with somebody that is into gardening the way I'm into gardening. So thanks.
Yes.
Cover
Right.
crops. What are they and why would I use them?
All right. So a cover crop is, in a general term, it's basically anything that you grow to add nutrients into the soil, prevent your soil from being eroded away. It's benefiting the soil. So any green material can be a cover crop if you cut it and you just let it decay on top. There's then nitrogen fixing cover crops. And I think people are more familiar with maybe hearing that term. So a lot of the nitrogen fixing cover crops are actually in the legume family, Fabaceae family, the pea family.
Right.
Not all of them are as good. Believe it or not, beans are not great at nitrogen fixing, but your vetch, your fava beans, they're great at fixing nitrogen. And what that means is, so you plant, you take whatever crop you have out, you want to add nitrogen, so you plant the seeds and you let it grow. Now, the idea is there's rhizobium bacteria in the soil, and it will fix to the roots of these legumes, and it will take atmospheric nitrogen and, quote, fix it into a usable source for the plant. So the plant is making its own nitrogen. And then the idea is you're going to sequester that nitrogen in the plant, chop it down, and then that nitrogen is going to go back into the soil. Few mistakes, or the number one mistake people make is, say you're growing fava beans and you're letting the fava beans go to fruit and you're picking those fava beans. Mm-hmm. And then you're using it as a cover crop. And, there's green in it, but you're not getting the maximum amount of nitrogen. To get the maximum of nitrogen out of your cover crop, your nitrogen fixing cover crop, you need to cut it in the flower stage. So which could be pretty, you're like, well, I want fava beans, but you're not going to get the nitrogen from it. Like lupins, cut them when they're in flower. Most people have that rhizobium in the soil. Mm-hmm. I've never inoculated. You could buy an inoculant at some nurseries and you just coat the seeds in it. But to double check if you have it, grow 1 year and pull out the roots and you'll see nodules on it.
Oh,
And these
right.
nodules should be pinkish color if it's actually working. Now, don't mistake root knot nematode on your tomatoes for it. That's totally different. This is going to be in the pea family, but yeah, it'll have nodules and they're going to be pink and you won't need the inoculant. If you pull out a plant and you don't see that, then you should probably buy it, coat the seeds. And it's a bacteria. And, it's usually, like I said, I've had it in all my soils and never had to inoculate the seeds with it.
And it's a beneficial bacteria.
It's a beneficial bacteria. Yes, of course. It works. It's symbiotic. It works with the plant roots and it adheres to it, swells them up. And like I said, it's just a powerhouse of being able to take the atmospheric nitrogen, converting it into a form plants use.
When the reason for the cover crop then is there's twofold at least. First of all, it's fixing the nitrogen and we're either turning that in, and it's not best to turn it in, or chopping it down, right?
You could chop it down and turn it in. What other mistake people make is thinking that it's actually in the nodules. It's not. It's in the green material.
Oh, very good.
So if you cut the plant down and you leave the root system in there and you think that's going to give you the nitrogen, it's not. The nitrogen is the green of the plant.
The greens of the plant.
So yes, yeah, you could cut it down, let it just die down, or you could turn it under, but you definitely need the green material.
And they call that chop and drop, right?
I guess that's what they call it.
Okay, good. That's in my world.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Especially in the desert, one of the things that I've noticed here is that when I have a cover crop growing, and I grow cowpeas, which is a nitrogen fixer, and sweet potatoes. And one of the things that I noticed a couple of years ago in the front yard here at the urban farm was that in August, so that's the hottest time of year here in the desert, it was 140 degrees at ground level. It was 120 degrees, 6 inches down. Underneath,
wow.
Yeah, exactly. Underneath the cover crops, it was 89 degrees. So just like shading one of our walls with a shade tree, we're shading the ground, and that's a really important piece as well.
Yeah, we know water, we're going to have less evapotranspiration from the water. Earthworms are going to move up closer to the surface and going to work closer to your roots. They don't want to be warm. They don't want to be up there. They're going to go pretty far down. So, and we all know the benefits of earthworms. So yeah, it's a great mulch, and it's, like a lot of, well, not all mulches, people use straw mulch, and that really is helping just with the water retention.
Right.
But why not use a nitrogen fixing cover crop? And it's interesting, UC Davis, where I work, a friend of mine, actually, they just discovered a corn species that is nitrogen fixing.
What?
So,
wow.
Yeah, so they don't actually have to, basically the corn makes its own nitrogen. So they don't have to add any nitrogen to it. And, of course, once scientists start, zeroing in on these groups and these cultures that have these plants, luckily they're putting into place something that's going to benefit, the groups that are growing this corn. But yeah, you could see on the prop roots, this mucilage, and that's where they think the nitrogen fixing is happening.
Wow.
So it's very interesting. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. All I just know is that now there's a corn that nitrogen fixes. So we're used to just hearing the pea family and vetch. But yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting.
So grow cover crops to add nitrogen, add greens, add life to your soil, and to shade it.
Exactly. Yes.
Awesome. Well,
Got
thank
it.
you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us about your podcast, The Flower Power Garden Hour, and where we can find it.
All right. It's on all podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Google, my YouTube, which is Marlene the Plant Lady. Like you, I like talking about gardening. I like learning about gardening. So I try to get interesting guests on that I could learn from, like you. I also do a question and answer once a month, and your monthly to-do list for my zone. I tell people gardening is pretty specific to where you're at. So, but of course it carries across. Yeah. But I just love gardening, and it covers all aspects of gardening: indoor plants, vegetables, flowers, the pests, and the good bugs that go with them. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.